So this time on Vintage Steel, I'm going to show you how I've resolved a persistent clonking noise on the front suspension on my CLK that I've had for the last 18 months for zero cost. So I've had this persistent clonk on the front of the CLK since I've had it about 18 months. This is always a hard one to explain because your explanation of a squeak, a clonk, a bang can be interpreted differently by someone else. But this was distinctly a sort of a rubber sort of binding noise followed by a snap or a clonk noise on full lock at low speed. Now I've seen this seems to be quite popular, or should I say quite common on CLKs, and people do have a problem trying to diagnose and find it, so therefore why I thought I'd share this with you, and the fact that it costs nothing to resolve. So how does this noise manifest itself? Well, first of all, it's usually when it's warmer weather, usually on partial or full lock at low speed, because obviously you're not doing full lock at full speed. Going forwards, going reversing, initially you'll just hear a bit of a binding noise and then a clonk, and you'll feel it through the pedals, through the steering wheel. It could feel like either side of the car. Mine was more pronounced on the passenger side, and it felt like the top strut, like a spring was skipping in its holder or slipping or moving, or a ball joint was pulling out. It just didn't sound right. Anyway, what have I done on the car over the last 18 months? I've replaced the anti-roll bar links, I've replaced the anti-roll bar bushes with poly bushes, I've disconnected the anti-roll bar and driven round. Now here's another thing: if you jack the car up with the wheels dangling down, have a look round, pull on a prod and put it back down. You put it back down, it doesn't do it straight away. It takes a couple of days to sort of settle in and manifest itself, which sort of led me to always think, is it a metal elastic rubber brush or something like that? So anyway, so that's how it happens, basically turning right or left. Mine was worse turning left, and at low speed you'd hear this sort of a binding noise and then a clonk or a pop. So replace anti-roll bar links, replace the drop links, replace anti-roll bar bushes, replace one of the front lower arms. I was about to replace the lower back arms, but I jacked it up in my new super duper quick jacks, which is absolutely fantastic access. Dropped the back end of the lower rear arms out and checked the metal elastic bushes on them, and they were fine. But then there's an interesting thing on the Mercedes design, and I don't know why they've done it. They've done like an elliptical hole with little tabs, and basically I could see where there was wear marks on it, and it had been skipping on that because it wasn't actually fully tight, the lower suspension arm. Now when I say it wasn't fully tight, it was torqued to the correct tightness, but because of the stiffness of the aluminium frame, that's actually met its torque value before it's actually squashed and pinched this arm. And if it doesn't pinch this inner arm, because of the design of this sort of oval hole with little pips in, it will move. So let me go underneath and show you what I'm talking about, and hopefully it will make sense. I was thinking of taking it off just to show you, but I'm not. Now I've tightened it up and it's not making a noise, I'm not disturbing it. So I'll try and show you the best as I can, do a diagram, and hopefully this will help. So this was the problem here. These are the lower arms, so this is the front lower arm and the rear lower arm. And where this one mounts here, you'll see you've got the actual arm, then you've got an inner bush, and then the rubber, and then another bush, and then an aluminium lower subframe here, so either side, and the bolt goes through there. Now this bolt was torqued tight, but when I took it out you could see there was evidence that it had been just moving and skipping on the inside. So I've tightened these F-tight on both sides, so on this side as well, and it stopped doing it now. So what I'm going to do, just going to do a little drawing and show you what this is and explain why it can move. So I'm going to try and get the camera in focus while I draw this. So let's assume this is a metal elastic bush, and say here is your suspension arm. So you have basically you have a steel outer, so we'll just have a steel outer all the way around like this, and then you have an inner hole like that. Now then, all this area here, all this is a rubber bush, and the suspension hole is going to go through here. I'll just do it dotted for a minute. Now most normal bushes, that will be a full hole, and that will be tight on the shank of the bolt. So even if you don't have it fully tight, it's located through there. CLK for some reason, Mercedes I should say for some reason, made a hole like this. And I'll try and find a library picture and post it on. So they made a hole like this, it was elongated, with casting pips that go all the way through. And that locates on the shank of the bolt. So this is now the bolt in here. So that's the bolt there. But the problem is, this is not a tight fit amongst these 4 pips. And when you look down on your arm, so if we're now looking down on it this way, so if this was the suspension arm here, and you've got, so this bit here is this middle bit, and then you've got your aluminium frame of your car there. When this bolt comes through like this, and your nut and your threads are protruding like that, when you tighten that up, this section here is so stiff you actually get to the torque setting before it's pulled in tight on these surfaces. And because of the design of this, and it allows it to float, it does not pull in tight. So basically the solution is torque tighten these very, very tight. Basically I just pulled on it until I was grunting and making noises. So what I would suggest if you have this problem is, first of all, obviously undo this, inspect this rubber around here and make sure this is okay. You're not going to just be tightening these bolts up to eliminate a worn lower arm. Make sure the lower arms are in condition. I've heard of people where you basically, and I had it with mine, the bottom arms are in excellent condition. I've had a pry bar on them, no movement whatsoever, jacked up, put the car down, no noise for a day or so, suspension all settles in again and it starts making this noise. So all I did last weekend, I took them off, inspected them, make sure they're okay. I could see actually on these little pips here, I could see, because they're only a rough cast aluminium, I could see some shiny marks on them and some witness marks on the bolt, so I knew they'd been touching and they shouldn't be touching. So I took it all down, cleaned it all, reassembled it, tightened it to an F-tight setting on the torque wrench, which basically is not using your torque wrench, it's just pulling on it as hard as you can until you think you're nearly going to snap the bolts. These bolts are probably, they're a 19mm span on them, so they're probably M12, something like that, so they're going to take it, and they're a fine thread. Tighten them up as tight as you can, drop your car down in suspension, drive around for a few days, and hopefully that's solved your persistent Mercedes front suspension clonking noise that you've had for a while. If you like this, please like and subscribe.